Good morning, Gilderland Kindergarten friends. How are you? Are you good? I'm good. I hope you're having a great day. I have one more squirrel story, and I wasn't going to read it, but I love those darn squirrels so much that I want to share with you. Those darn squirrels fly south by Adam. This book's birthday was 2012. Just like you have a birthday, remember books have a birthday, and we have a special name for it. It's called a copyright. And this book was made in 2012. Old Man Fookwire lived at the edge of town in a beautiful forest full of birds and squirrels. But he was such a grump. He scolded fireflies for being too bright. He yelled at clouds for being too fluffy. And when the lilacs bloomed, he pinched his nose with a clothespin so he wouldn't have to smell their scent. Cranky Mr. Fookwire. We saw some goodness, though, in Mr. Fookwire, haven't we? Even for a grump like Fookwire, it had been a glorious summer. He'd spent most of his time painting the colorful birds that visited his backyard. Sometimes by accident, he painted a squirrel. Other times, the squirrels painted themselves. Then Fookwire would shake his old man fist and shout, "Those darn squirrels!" But now it was fall. The weather had turned crisp. The leaves had changed colors, and soon the birds would fly south for the winter. Fookwire would have to endure the long, cold winter months alone. We know he's not going to be alone, though, right? The squirrels are there. He has a little note on the table. You want to know what it says? Dear Diary, the birds are going to leave soon, and that makes me sad. Well, not exactly alone. The squirrels would be there too. Normally, the squirrels spent winters playing ping pong, building ships in bottles, and knitting. But this year, they had other plans. They were curious about the birds, where the birds went for winter vacation, so they decided to follow them. Now, not many people know this, but squirrels have a comprehensive understanding of aerodynamic engineering. You know what that means? They know how to fly. They built gyrocopters from pine cones. They built gliders from leaves. They even built a zeppelin from an old shopping bag. Looks like a flying boat, right? There's the leaves and the pine cone. Do you think they'd be able to go a long ways with that in the air? When the first frost arrived, the bonga birds took off, followed by the baba birds and the yaba birds. They circled the house, waved goodbye to Fookwire, and headed south. The flugel bird spent a few minutes scarfing up the last of the farfel seeds. Then he took off too. Fookwire pouted as the sound of flapping wings faded into the distance. He turned to go inside and heard a rustling in the trees. A rustling followed by a whir. A whir followed by a buzz. I wonder what it is. You think it's the squirrels? Maybe it's something new he's going to make friends with. We know it's not the cat because you saw a video of the cat. It was the squirrels launching their flying machines one by one. Some of the aircraft flew straighter than the others, but eventually they all flew up and away from the harvest-colored treetops into the cool blue autumn air. The old man could hardly believe his eyes. "Gray googly moogly," he said. "It's a whole flock of flying squirrels." Well, there are flying squirrels, but not this kind. The squirrels followed the flugelbirds for days. They flew through the night. They flew through the rain, and they even flew through turbulence. You know what that means? It's kind of like the wind. Finally, just when the squirrels thought they could not fly any longer, the flugelbird swooped down and landed gracefully on a beach. The squirrels landed with a crunch. So there they are, flying through the night, the rain, the wind, and finally landing on the beach. Do you remember in the information book we shared about squirrels where it said squirrels live? They live in the forest or the woods. I wonder if they're going to like the beach. The beach was so warm and beautiful. The squirrels were so happy to be done flying, they decided to have a fiesta. They went swimming, ate mangoes, they played the marimba, and danced the merengue. The party lasted all night long. Over the next few weeks, the squirrels made themselves right at home. There were many new plants to snack on. There was also many new birds to see. There were cocoa birds, kiki birds, caramba birds. There were too many birds to count. One of the birds reminded the squirrels of somebody they knew. Who does the birds remind them of? I know. Deep in the snowy woods, a strange noise woke Old Man Fookwire from his nap. It was coming from the telephone. He was getting a call. When he picked up the receiver, the operator asked if he would accept charges for a long-distance call from the village of Santa Veca. Then there were chattering on the line. Those darn squirrels! Do squirrels make phone calls? This is not an information book. It's a storybook. The old man missed the birds, and even though he'd never admit it, he missed squirrels too. So he decided to join them. Fookwire had a car that he kept under a tarp in a shed by the stream. He bought it in 1957 and had only driven it twice. He loaded it up with easel paints and brushes, fixed himself a snack of, do you remember? Cottage cheese and pepper, and hit the road. Then he drove 12 miles an hour all the way to Santa Veca. The nice people behind him had plenty of time to admire his car. Look at those people waiting. Do they look happy to be behind Mr. Fookwire? I'm not so sure about that. Finally, Fookwire arrived in the little village. He spotted the flugelbird flying overhead and followed him to the beach. When he got out of the car, the squirrels gave him a big hug. Maybe it was nice weather. Maybe it was the beautiful scenery. Maybe it was the squirrels dancing in his pants. But for the first time in a long time, the old man laughed. Do you think it was the birds, the squirrels, or the warm weather that made him happy? Soon Fookwire set up his easel and began to paint the birds. Da-ba-da-bo, sang the cocoa bird. Ba-da-ba-bo, sang the kiki bird. Fookwire was overjoyed. The birds were even more amazing than the birds back home. Uh-oh. Huh, muttered the flugelbird. He's painting and having a grand time with the new birds. How are the birds that usually live with Mr. Fookwire feel? They said, "Hurruh." Kind of cranky. Maybe they're a little jealous. The sun was very hot and Fookwire sweated, but he kept painting. Fookwire sweltered, but he kept on painting. That just means it was super duper hot. Then Fookwire slumped forward, face first, into his painting. The squirrels dragged the old man into the shade and gave him water. He was as red as a bonga bird. Got too much sun. Did not use sunblock. He decided it was time to go home. The squirrels decided to go with him. They had a wonderful vacation, but after all, it was almost time for their annual snow fort building competition. They had one last snack of mango, then Fookwire waved goodbye to the birds, and they piled in the car. Are you surprised the squirrels went home with Mr. Fookwire? I wasn't. The trip back home was much quicker for all of them. The squirrels drove most of the way. Those darn squirrels. All right, friends, I included a video on the next slide about birds flying south in the winter. And remember, the next time you have library, Mrs. Healy is who you will see on the screen. Bye. Mwah.